National Electrical Code Article 430.9 mandates that motor starters be installed in enclosures of adequate size to facilitate proper heat dissipation. This requirement is in place to prevent overheating of the starter components, which could potentially lead to equipment failure or even a fire. The size of the enclosure is not arbitrary, it must be sufficient to manage the heat generated by the starter during normal operation. Several factors influence the amount of heat produced by a motor starter. These include the horsepower of the motor being controlled, the starter's duty cycle, that is, how frequently it starts and stops the motor, the ambient temperature of the surrounding environment, and the design characteristics of the starter itself. Larger motors and more frequent start-stop cycles will generally result in greater heat generation. Similarly, higher ambient temperatures will reduce the enclosure's ability to dissipate heat effectively. The NEC does not provide a specific formula or table for calculating the precise enclosure size required for a given motor starter. Instead, it relies on the manufacturer's instructions and listing to determine the appropriate enclosure. Starter manufacturers conduct extensive testing to determine the thermal performance of their products and specify the minimum enclosure size needed to maintain safe operating temperatures. These instructions should be carefully followed during installation. When selecting an enclosure, several key considerations are important. Firstly, the enclosure must be listed and labeled for its intended use. This indicates that it has been tested and certified by a recognized testing laboratory, such as underwriters' laboratories, to meet specific safety standards. Secondly, the enclosure must be suitable for the environmental conditions in which it will be installed. For example, in damp or corrosive environments, an M4 or 4X enclosure may be required to provide adequate protection against moisture and corrosion. Thirdly, the enclosure must have sufficient internal space to accommodate the starter and all associated wiring and connections without overcrowding. Overcrowding can restrict airflow and impede heat dissipation. In addition to selecting the correct enclosure size, proper ventilation is also essential for effective heat dissipation. Enclosures should be located in areas with adequate airflow, and any ventilation opening should not be obstructed. In some cases, it may be necessary to provide forced ventilation, such as a fan, to supplement natural convection. Regularly inspect motor starter enclosures for signs of overheating, such as discoloration, deformation, or unusual odors. Any evidence of overheating should be investigated immediately and addressed by a qualified electrician. Common causes of overheating include undersized enclosures, inadequate ventilation, loose connections, and component failure. To comply with NEC Article 430.9, firstly, consult the motor starter manufacturer's instructions for the recommended enclosure size. Secondly, select an enclosure that is listed and labeled for its intended use. Thirdly, ensure the enclosure is suitable for the environmental conditions. Fourthly, verify that the enclosure has sufficient internal space for the starter and wiring. Fifthly, provide adequate ventilation around the enclosure. Sixthly, regularly inspect the enclosure for signs of overheating. Finally, address any overheating issues promptly. Ignoring the enclosure size requirements of NEC Article 430.9 can have serious consequences. Overheating can lead to premature failure of the motor starter, resulting in costly downtime and repairs. In more severe cases, overheating can cause a fire, posing a significant safety hazard to personnel and property. Therefore, it is crucial to prioritize proper enclosure sizing and ventilation for motor starters to ensure safe and reliable operation. The NEC is a comprehensive set of standards, and understanding its requirements is essential for anyone involved in electrical work. Consulting with a qualified electrician is always recommended to ensure compliance with all applicable codes and regulations. They can assess the specific application, select the appropriate equipment, and perform the installation in a safe and professional manner. Remember, electrical safety is paramount, and adhering to the NEC is a critical step in protecting people and property from electrical hazards. In addition to the basic requirements of NEC Article 430.9, there may be other applicable codes and standards that should be considered, depending on the specific application and location. For example, Local building codes may have additional requirements for electrical installations, and industry-specific standards may provide further guidance on best practices. Staying informed about the latest codes and standards is essential for maintaining a safe and compliant electrical system. Proper heat dissipation is crucial for the longevity and reliability of motor starters. Overheating can accelerate the degradation of insulation materials, reduce the lifespan of electronic components, and increase the risk of failure. By ensuring adequate enclosure size and ventilation, you can significantly extend the service life of your motor starters and reduce the likelihood of unexpected downtime. In summary, NEC Article 430.9 is a critical requirement for ensuring the safe and reliable operation of motor starters. By selecting the appropriate enclosure size, providing adequate ventilation, and regularly inspecting for signs of overheating, you can prevent equipment failure, reduce the risk of fire, and protect people and property from electrical hazards. Always consult with a qualified electrician to ensure compliance with all applicable codes and regulations.